than Megahorn, but its set versatility made it even better, making it even more difficult to handle. And of course, no matter which set it chose, it was always going to be threatening by virtue of how badly Megahorn ripped the tier up. We've already mentioned the almost peerless instant brutality of the Choice Band set. The Substitute Swarm Select Swords Dance set was one of the tier's most dangerous cleaners, sure. Dropping to low HP was risky on a sand affected Pokemon in the Tyranitar tier, but that could be assuaged through weather changing teammates, and the rewards were worthwhile, as one setup, Heracross's cleaning prowess was nigh unmatched, outrunning and one-hit KOing nearly everything. There was something to be said for the insanity that was one-hit KOing Metagross with a neutral physical attack even if boosted. Heracross could also Swords Dance without the sub, and without the select, it became even more threatening when it could fit Fighting Stab onto its set, meaning it didn't require Skarm removing support as it could just do so itself, while Heracross also loved the longevity of leftovers, meaning teams couldn't just try to outlast it in Sandstorm, especially in conjunction with Protect. When Skarmory started shifting away from running Drill Peck in favor of Protect and Toxic, Swords Dance Focus Punch Heracross appeared and punched it like nothing else. Heracross didn't even have to boost at all. It could simply use an all-out attacking set, maximizing his coverage with Hidden Power Ghost for Gengar. It could dip into other items too. Lum or Chestleberry allowed it to counteract sleep moves, with the latter being useful for allowing it to stop sleep while still making use of Guts if being hit by other status. Alternatively, it could run Sleep Talk. It was a great Breloom stop. Heracross could even function as a lead, instantly scaring the popular Tyranitar lead who thought it safely set up Sand at the beginning of the game. Indeed, many teams relied on dealing with Heracross through setting up passive damage before it got a chance to come in, meaning it'd be on a timer as soon as it hit the field. But lead Heracross threw a serious wrench in this. The best part was that Heracross could mix and match as it pleased, and even toy with other options to great effect. Sub Focus Punch? Sure. Toxic Heracross to utterly ruin Salamence and Gyarados? Why not? It can afford the moveset. Thief Heracross to steal leftovers? Absolutely. Endure Reversal Heracross? It needed a lot of support, but under the right conditions, boy could that thing sweep. Quick Claw Heracross. Once again, it sure could afford it. Tossing Select Berry on a non-sub Heracross to take advantage of how often it dropped to low HP? Sure. In a similar vein, using Swarm over Guts on the Choice Band set for a Megahorn that could one-hit KO Salamence? Yeah. Heracross was one of the single most dangerous Pokemon in Advanced OU and was massively defining and influential. Fun fact, in Japan, Heracross was considered so dangerous as to be ban-worthy from OU. So all in all, it was an insanely successful generation for Heracross, as long as Megahorn hit, of course. It was a bit high risk, but it more than made up for it. Its potential reward wasn't just high, it was stratospheric.
Don't miss Marvel Animation's X-Men 97.
Get this done by working together as a
Its potential reward wasn't just high, it was stratospheric. Heracross also had a solid niche in Gen 3 Ubers. Its Choice Band Megahorns were nearly impossible for many teams to switch into. Every Uber not named Ho-Oh or Rayquaza was neutral or weak to it, making it incredibly easy to spam and cleave huge chunks of damage on whatever switched in. Plus, Ho-Oh and Rayquaza were deathly afraid of Banded Rock Slide. With how easily Groudon and Kyogre spread Thunder Wave, it was easy to slow down opposing teams and run them over with repeated Megahorns. Alternatively, Heracross could go for a late game sweep with a sub select set, fully taking advantage of the fact that Sun and Rain were the tier's dominant weather. And so Heracross was one of the best sleeper picks in Gen 3 Ubers, capable of threatening pretty much every team. Generation 4 gifted Heracross a fighting stab of equal power to its mighty Megahorn in the form of close combat, making it even more insanely dangerous, and that wasn't all. Did Heracross want to instantly fix its speed? Choice Scarf it was. Did Heracross want to instantly boost its attack without the move lock effort of Choice Band? It could go with Life Orb, Flame Orb, or Toxic Orb. Even Heracross's coverage options were stronger. It threatened to destroy flying types not with Rock Slide, but with the much more powerful Stone Edge, while Night Slash was an improvement for ripping through ghost types. Heracross could even take on trapping duties with the now physical Pursuit. And with all of these boosts, Heracross instantly became one of the most popular, dangerous, defining Pokemon in early Diamond and Pearl, utilizing a number of different sets, much like it did in Advance to rip through the metagame. Except now, it was even more instantly threatening because one couldn't necessarily beat it by outrunning it, as Choice Scarf would make quick work of Pokemon like Infernape. Weezing of all things was quite popular in large part because it didn't crumple against Heracross. Heracross. Sadly, the huge popularity and success Heracross enjoyed in Diamond and Pearl didn't quite last. It started when Gliscor started eclipsing Weezing, as thanks to Roost's reliable recovery, it was far more resilient against prolonged Heracross assaults, as well as being able to outspeed non-Scarf Heracross variants that could potentially boost up and blow it away. That was just the beginning though. The discovery of Swords Dance Extreme Speed Lucario as a serious competitor for Heracross certainly didn't help matters. However, these were minor all things considered. Sure, Hera wasn't as outright dominant as it had been, but it was still a highly prominent Pokemon. The real blow came with the release of Platinum. The Rotom appliance brought another effective Heracross check to the table, but Rotom A, Swords Dance Lucario, and Gliscor were nothing compared to Scizor. If Heracross had just had to contend with the uptick in usage of the other three, it would have barely slowed down. They were inconveniences more than anything else. However, Platinum gifting Scizor Bullet Punch, which in conjunction with U-Turn made for the perfect choice bander that rocketed the red metal bug to #1 in usage, was a death knell so precise it almost seemed engineered to displace Heracross from the metagame completely. It wasn't that Heracross was bad, far from it. It was just that it was never going to be able to compete with the immense utility Scizor brought to a team, with its coveted dragon resistant steel typing, powerful momentum maintaining U-Turn, and ultimate revenge killing priority attack. As such, Heracross went from being a top tier staple to all but disappearing. Well, from serious play anyway. It was still used enough in OU that it remained in the tier, but it was never used in tournament play, and slowly but surely, its OU usage began to slip. Finally, well into Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the long-awaited, previously unthinkable finally happened. Heracross dropped to UU. To say Heracross destroyed UU would be an understatement. Some players naively predicted it wouldn't be so bad. After all, Weezing was already a top tier Pokemon for its ability to stave off other big threats like Venusaur. Heracross then promptly obliterated Weezing with a +2 Guts boosted Facade, and then all bets were off. This Pokemon was officially uncounterable. With its useful speed and great natural bulk, it wasn't exactly left wanting for switch-in opportunities either, and it smacked nearly the entire tier for either super effective or neutral damage. And with a Pokemon as strong as Heracross, neutral damage was all it needed to grab KOs against tier staples like Milotic. Every set was absolutely ferocious. Scarf, Choice Band, Status Orb, sub-variants, they all shredded the tier with minimal effort. Certain players even began running an excellent Life Orb set with both Stabs and Rest Talk, which packed longevity in addition to power. And so eventually Heracross was predictably banned from UU. So did Heracross just languish in BL? Well, not quite. It eventually found a resurgence in OU. Not quite enough to become a true OU Pokemon again, but its niche was legitimate, and it saw tournament success for the first time since Diamond and Pearl. First, Scizor's usage had dropped off a cliff for a number of reasons. Second, the role Heracross rose to fill was not something Scizor could replicate. In its desperation to handle the externally exasperating Breloom, the player base turned to Heracross, whose Choice Band Guts Sleep Talk set turned Spore into an opportunity to fire off its devastating attacks, which cleave through even resists. Even Gliscor couldn't switch into it safely because of the insane damage Band Guts Facade did. It was a small niche, but a unique, valuable one that brought Heracross back to a legitimate place in DPP OU. Also, despite enormous power creep, Heracross once again had a niche in Ubers. It was smaller this time around, but its Scarf set was legit. It was hyper specific, but it was one of the few Pokemon able to switch in safely against Darkrai. It resisted both Dark Pulse and Focus Blast, as being slept by Dark Void would activate Guts, and Darkrai was eviscerated by both Megahorn and Close Combat, which were threatening to much of the Ubers tier. Even Giratina Origin didn't particularly enjoy switching into Guts Megahorn with Stealth Rock up. Heracross wasn't exactly the kind of thing you slapped on every team, but it certainly had its place, and it could be a fierce late game cleaner since Megahorn tore through Mewtwo and the Laddies with ruthless efficiency. So overall, Heracross had a successful adventurous Generation 4. With the immense power creep of Generation 5, Heracross was never gonna make it in OU. Scizor continued to dominate, Gliscor had gained Poison Heal, and there were several obnoxious new additions like Jellicent that would make life difficult for it. This sent Heracross down to UU, and there it became a star. It pretty much operated in two modes. Either it would be tasked with tearing through offensive teams with Choice Scarf, or it would act as a defensive team's worst nightmare with Swords Dance, using leftovers for that all-important longevity. In both roles, it was outstanding, especially because it had never been easier to circumvent its limited defensive profile. It could hit the field easily thanks to the many U-turn and volt switching using Pokemon it could partner up with, allowing it to bludgeon the opposition repeatedly. And it had plenty of checks like Zapdos and Eevee-like Gligar, but as always, Heracross could destroy them with good play. It only got more dangerous over time too, as in Black and White 1, it received its Dream World ability Moxie, which elevated its Scarf set to new heights. It wasn't just more effective at cleaning now, it was so capable of creating an instant snowball effect where it take over and finish a game with such minimal effort that offensive teams now had to go out of their way to not get swept by it. And even that might not be enough. Suddenly not even being unnaturally bulky resist was enough to stave Heracross off. Even something like offensive Zapdos also had to stay healthy enough to not drop to a +1 close combat. This was perhaps the most significant contributing factor to Nidoqueen's increase in UU usage that eventually lifted it out of RU. It was one of the very few Pokemon that could withstand Heracross's hits without going full defensive. Plus, even if it wasn't exactly foolproof, sure, it withstood Heracross's stabs decently, but one Earthquake on the switch and it was in trouble. Heracross loved making Earthquake predictions in general, since it also slammed other switch-ins to its stabs like Chandelure and Quillfish. What made Heracross even more effective was that it was part of the fighting boom that defined much of UU's offense. When paired with other dangerous fighters, usually Mienshao, but also very feasibly Virizion, Cobalion, or Scrafty, it was difficult for the opponent to withstand the combined fighting type assault, and as such, Scarf Heracross often wound up sweeping even teams that were well prepared for it on paper. Of course, Swords Dance Heracross continued to excel, particularly at the peaks of Hail's dominance. With leftovers, it was one of the few Pokemon capable of threatening those teams. It was always just common enough to prevent Stall from ever getting comfortable. It wasn't just a stall killer either. Since it also ran Guts, it thus completely turned the tables on would-be answers like Cofagrigus and Sableye, and was just a fiercely effective attacker in general. The fact that such a brutally dangerous Pokemon was often overlooked was just testament to how obscenely terrifying, defining, and prominent the Scarf set was. It's not often that Scarf Pokemon are also among the most threatening Pokemon in a tier, but that's exactly what Heracross was. So chalk up another success for the Beetle in Generation 5. If you've got insectophobia, no worries. VGC is one of the hardest places for bug types to thrive. Spread, rock, and fire moves have made it so only the most exceptional insects are able to find a place in VGC greatness. Scizor, Volcarona, Araquanid, Escavalier, Durant, Shedinja, most of these bugs have some sort of unique trait to set them apart, be it Wonder Guard, or Water Bubble, or Technician Bullet Punch. It's a rough ecosystem for the bug type. So what sets Heracross apart? Well, how about 125 base attack, one of the best abilities in the game, and access to stat Megahorn? Yeah, that's pretty good. Heracross has plenty of things going against it in VGC. It's not particularly fast, its defenses aren't that great, and its typing leaves it vulnerable to plenty of Pokemon. But what it does offer is some of the best in class single target bug damage in the game. And over time, various trainers have been tempted by that massive power. Now, bug isn't a particularly sought after offensive type, except for a few situations, one of which might be to remove psychic types. Like Mavie, the Cresselia that dominated VGC 2012. One of the first players to show Heracross's potential was Randy R. Inanimate Qua. R. Inanimate developed a Heracross team for the International Wi-Fi Challenge in April 2012. R. Inanimate's Heracross was a one-man Cresselia removal force, outfitted with a bug gem and some investment in its already okay special defense to handle one of the format's most dominant mons. R. Inanimate also gave his Heracross close combat and feint for some priority. But unfortunately, his special defense somewhat went to waste against many Cresselias, which opted for Psyshock and bypassed his bulk. He also showcased what would become a common option on Heracross teams, Tailwind, in this case on his Togekiss. Nevertheless, R. Inanimate inspired Marco Niskor's Sandoval to give Heracross a shot at Pleasanton Regionals, and Niskor put the team to great use, winning the Regionals and evaporating some Cresselias in the process. But when it comes to Heracross players in 2012, there's another